Hey Scorpio, welcome to March 2020. Um, so I guess I've dived into your reading a couple times and I've had false starts, many false starts. And so I've even said this before to you, and I'll say it again. I feel like part of the energy starting in March is incorporating false starts into your life practice, or kind of like when you're tested or when there's something that feels like a roadblock or something that feels like you're being stopped in your tracks a little bit. I think it's like the message is kind of look at that as a threshold guardian. Look at it as an opportunity and an invitation to kind of look at your story in a different way, to feel your story out differently, to kind of get a second opinion, actually, is where we're starting. And I'm just saying that, again, because it's been so difficult for me to kind of really get into a flow with your cards and find the message. So I'm just using that energy to start us out because I think that there is sort of maybe a tendency for us this month to rush into something a little bit and to need to slow down and kind of process and to be open to letting new information shape how our trajectory goes, because I think anything is still really possible for us, and I think we run the risk, okay, exactly. I think we kind of run the risk of getting caught up in a mental shit show. But this whole month is definitely about transformation. This month is definitely about pressure being put on you so that you can become a diamond. And I think that there is definitely you're being asked to view that process of transformation from a space of admitting that it is molding you into a better version of yourself. So for example, it's going to the gym and doing 100 crunches a day. That sounds painful and I don't really want to show up and do that. But I guess you're also kind of working with the energy, because I think you know that it is part of it's kind of the bullshit is serving you, in that it is pressure that is transforming how you respond and kind of helping you evolve into an even more enlightened version of yourself. And it's a very Scorpio story. I've said this to you in one of my other kind of false readings, but it's this is just the story of your life too, which is death and rebirth and pressure and all this phoenix energy in a way. So with the Nine of Swords in reverse, I think what I was just trying to say is that you're finding space to be aware of this enough, this process of transformation, where you're becoming goo inside the chrysalis to become a butterfly. I think you're familiar enough with these rhythms by this point that even when this mental anxiety shows up, even when the overwhelm is present, even when you're kind of what the fuck, oh my god, why, this is too much, you're able to kind of step from behind it a little bit and sort of let it go. You're kind of well, this is part of being a Scorpio. This is part of me evolving, is letting this happen. So I think there's just sort of definitely, I would say still, I think your last reading was about going slow to move faster, and I think that you're definitely still being asked to what am I trying to say? You're still being asked to really be sort of above board, is what I want to say. I think you're getting a lot of new information. On top of more work to go, more to do, more, and we got 2 9s, 9 9. See if any more 9s show up for you, but it's kind of things are almost done, almost complete. You're almost at the end of a cycle, but there's a little more to push through, a little more to do, and more pressure is being applied. So it's kind of like midterms are literally coming up for me and members of my cohort in graduate school, right? So it's kind of that. It's like the pressure of midterms is coming up, but you're also like, well, I'm not gonna fail. Like, I've passed every time before, so it's like kind of like you're letting go of these tapes of like, oh, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? You're like, no, I know. I just got to do the work. I just got to show up. I just got to let this process happen. I just got to move through this and know that there is going to be kind of some relief at some point. I feel like you're being supported by other people, and maybe this isn't directly on a project you're working on, but I think that it's like these cheerleaders, right? And I think you're being a cheerleader for others, and other people are bearing, maybe I'm, good lord, these are dogs. You are being a cheerleader for some people, and I think in return those people are being a cheerleader for you. I think there is definitely a sense of just like needing to know that, you know, people do have your back, and that you're not in this all alone, and that other people are kind of going through similar experiences or have similar patterns of struggle in their lives. And I think that's just kind of giving you maybe also some of that mental clarity or mental peace around like what's going on, like the pressure you're under. So, let's see what else. Well, we got the Knight of Wands in reverse. It's a raccoon, or red panda, rather. And then we also got the Queen of Wands in reverse. Oh, pardon me. So, fire energy, reversed fire energy. I'm almost tempted to say that this is kind of your own fiery spirit, even though you're a water sign. I mean, you're Scorpio, so I'm still conjure the Phoenix so much for you, and the Phoenix is definitely an element that deals with fire, and Scorpio as the sign of transformation. I think fire turning everything to ash and then things rising from the ashes is literally like your MO. It's what's been going on. It's kind of what you've learned to make peace with. But with this energy in reverse, I think the other thing to consider is that water energy and fire energy are kind of difficult energies to integrate. So even though you have like this symbolic presence of the Phoenix, you are at your core a water sign. And so I'm saying all that just to say that I think that you are maybe like kind of needing to integrate, I guess is what I'm trying to say, a lot of growth that's happened and a lot of like self-realization as well. And integration is something that can take time. I like to speak about magic specifically. Like, there are people who, I'm gonna pull some more cards. There are people who start to like gain some magical insights. Page of Swords in reverse. And things are great. Lots of weird court cards. You get some magical power. Definitely this. Dude, this is like super much the vibe of all that pressure I've been talking about that you're going through. And so to bring it back to these fire energies that I'm kind of like mumbling about, I guess what I'm trying to say is like some people, like you learn magic. This is what Noah Lampert said in his podcast. It's like you learn magic, and magic is like learning to see the world with new eyes. And then that's like you realizing you're a phoenix. That's you realizing like you have this power of transformation and you know what the process is and you can roll with it. But like if you never saw before and then suddenly you can see, after a while that's going to kind of get normalized. Like it's not going to feel so special anymore because it's just going to be like something you kind of like start inevitably taking for granted. Like its peak wears off. And so I feel like that's part of what's going on for you, is just that you've like had these deep personal realizations about yourself and who you really are, but meaning like that you have the power of fire even though you're a water sign. But with these energies being in reverse, I just feel like there's sort of a feeling for you maybe doubting yourself a little bit, or just kind of like having had these glimpses of who you're gonna be, but then kind of just backtracking on it or not believing it, or it's really like having to upgrade your own operating system and integrate the downloads that you've been getting type of energy, if that means anything to you. Page of Swords in reverse. I feel like there's messages. I'm going to use these pages as messages, but I feel like there's a message of love or connection or communication or something that is there but isn't coming in. It isn't happening. It's not like becoming much. So I'm just throwing that out there, that like most of this month for you is really about your own personal, like, kind of really integrating. I keep saying that, but it's really, I don't think new things are starting quite yet, just because part of where you're at is really uh gaining some sense of self-trust for your process and what you're going through right now. As I said with midterms, right? It's like if you're studying for midterms, like maybe you want to like find a new amour, but you don't really have time. So it just feels like there's like a bit of a pause, and like with this Ten of Wands too, it's like the overwhelm, or like the having to push just a little bit more, a little bit further. It's like a busy month. I just think it's a busy month, and it's a busy month that's testing you. And I think the test is, how bad do you want it, Scorpio? How bad do you want it? How bad do you want to be this King of Pentacles? How bad do you want to be this Knight of Cups? How bad do you want to be in touch with your own emotional self and core, and have your like sense of like, I can do anything, I can get through all these moments, and I can like emotionally regulate myself through anything, any challenges or any difficulty. I can kind of step up to the plate and take care of myself in the ways I need to succeed. And the King of Pentacles, like, you're building your empire, you're building like what your life's legacy is about, and all these tests, all this pressure, all this like needing to go further and needing to like go through the pressure cooker and to let go of the mental anguish you add on top of the pressure cooker you're already in, is kind of just saying like, can you let yourself go through those transformative fires and not be afraid of this other part of your nature, your creativity, your spirit, your passion, your dreams or whatever, right? Like the kind of like sparks of transformation, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Well, I'll see if anything else pops up, but I think that's pretty much it. It's like intensity. And again, it's like just not unusual for you. But I think what is new is just sort of like you being patient with yourself as it all happens, and when it is getting a little hot, you know, for your liking, you're kind of maybe leaning into it more. It's sitting with some of that pain or discomfort, or just kind of being like, I'm grateful for this pressure because this pressure is transforming me. I couldn't have become who I'm becoming without the pressure. And in the past, maybe the pressure would have like kind of, as we talked about with the Nine of Swords in reverse, in the past that pressure would have like made you kind of add like some mental anguish or some anxiety or some depression on top of everything else externally that you were going through. But now you're kind of like logically sort of making peace with the journey and where it's taking you. A lot of this is stepping up into some of your own power, as is most of life for a Scorpio, is like stepping up into your own power. And a call for balance. But again, particularly with work, I think this is like work-life balance, work self-care balance, work like going inward and kind of not taking stuff personally too is really key. And again, being grateful for the challenges. It's like willpower said, your problem is a gift. It's an opportunity to change. That's the vibe. And you know it, though, now. You're, like, on top of it. So it's not like, it doesn't feel so much like it's out of your control. It feels like you're kind of, like, jumping into the fire on purpose, knowing that you're secretly a phoenix that can be reborn from the pressure, reborn from the experience. If it were grad school midterms, for example, it's like, once I get this degree, I'm gonna be unstoppable. So it's worth putting myself through this because there is some value externally, and there's value internally in terms of the sense of power and authority I'm gaining within myself. And I'm starting to get some emotional legs too to handle all the responsibility. Like, I think about, like, what Tiffany Haddish said in an interview. She said success is heavy. So all of your challenges, all of the problems are there to help you be able to carry that success, because it doesn't come lightly. And it comes with that sense of responsibility. So I feel like what this month is about is, like, it kind of sucks, but it's not sucking as much as it would have used to suck in the past, because you're kind of, like, embracing it. You're embracing the pressure. Because you know it's transforming in you, and you're open to transforming. You're actively rolling with that process now. And that's the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance isn't always the least painful path. It's just the path that is sort of, like, taking you straight to the top. And that's the one that's transforming who you are. Which, again, is a normal month for you, more or less. Kind of your style. So, you got this. And I love you, and I will see you again in April. Bye.